Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Wells. Welcome to the Halloween Writing Excuses video. We have a couple of episodes that we need to finish before the end of the year, actually 3. And we were going to be doing these at World Fantasy, and we had to step out of that, but we still wanted to give you all the video and the opportunity to watch a live recording. We've actually never streamed audio and video of us recording live before, so this is kind of a cool new thing. Anyway, you're going to see some behind-the-scenes stuff as we figure out what we're doing. So thanks for tuning in to watch this weird video that we're making. Okay, so
most people are going to look at it and think, this isn't actually that weird, guys. You're just uncomfortable. It's not weird.
Hey,
this is how life is now.
now that I'm thinking of this as something that we're streaming publicly, it occurs to me that Brandon, your video feed is coming through as Adam Horn. Can you rename yourself?
Well, that's my assistant's computer. I'm not going to fiddle with anything because otherwise I could ruin it.
We'll just destroy it.
I'm just up in his setup.
This will be a fun game to play. You get to imagine that Adam Horn is actually Brandon Sanderson. But let's, okay, so we have, instead of Mary Robinette Kowal with us today, we have Mahatab Narsimhan, who is one of our very favorite people in the world. Thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
She was on a bunch of episodes. Were they this year or last year? I don't actually know because I'm a bad person.
Last year.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being with us again.
Love it.
We need to practice our intro, okay? And so that's going to go Howard and then Mahatab and then Brandon. And I'll start, and it says, this is Writing Excuses, Deliberate Discomfort 2 with Mahatab Narsimhan.
15 minutes long.
Because you're in a hurry.
And we're not that smart.
I'm Dan.
I'm Howard.
I'm Mahatab. Oh, sorry. Oh, swoops. After Howard. Okay. Can we do that again quickly?
Okay, let's do that again. Let's be a little quicker. Also, Mahatab, am I pronouncing your last name correctly?
Narsimhan.
Narsimhan. Okay.
Narsimhan.
I was not pronouncing the H in it, so I will.
Know when you want me to start Zencaster too.
Yeah, we will. We're not ready for that yet.
No worries. Sorry, no.
Okay. This is Writing Excuses, Deliberate Discomfort 2 with Mahatab Narsimhan.
15 minutes long.
Because you're in a hurry.
And we're not that smart.
I'm Dan.
I'm Howard.
I'm Mahatab.
And I'm Brandon.
Cool. Okay. I think that works. Anything else we need to do last minute before we start?
Nope. You have who's doing the book of the weekend, the homework already written down, I assume?
Yep. We've got that and we're good to go. So all we need now is Howard to do a pre-roll, which means Marshall start recording and Howard will do a pre-roll.
I'm waiting for the room to get quiet, and I'm like, no, that's not a thing any of us actually have control over. Pre-roll. I don't know what the project number is. I'm going to say 1. Deliberate Discomfort 2.
This is Writing Excuses, Deliberate Discomfort 2 with Mahatab Narsimhan.
15 minutes long.
Because you're in a hurry.
And we're not that smart.
I'm Dan.
I'm Howard.
I'm Mahatab.
And I'm Brandon.
Awesome. We are recording this live, and when this airs, you will be able to go and look up a YouTube video and watch us do this. But right now, we're very excited to be talking about deliberate discomfort. We had an episode on this topic that aired earlier this year that focused entirely on deliberate discomfort for the audience, writing things that you know are going to make people uncomfortable. And it was a very good episode. And there's a lot of really good advice in it. And if you want to know about that aspect of uncomfortable,
oh, damn it. Did we just lose Dan?
Yeah.
For those of you benefiting from the video feed, which is now a lot of you, Dan's internet appears to have frozen, and maybe he'll text us. Yeah.
This is now a very common experience in our lives. Oh, he
we
vanished
lost him completely. Yeah.
I wonder how long he kept talking before he realized.
No idea. No idea. Mahatab,
Yes.
is the picture of the dog behind you your dog?
He was my dog. Yeah. I lost him a couple of years ago, but we got this poster made. And, when I was writing for the longest time, he was always with me and, in my office. So I figured, okay, I still want him around.
I asked because that's poster quality dog. That's like a calendar dog. Okay, I just got a text message from Dan. Let's see what it says. Full power outage at his house. He lost everything.
Oh, dear.
Oh, my. Oh, my. He says hang on. It's back now, but it may take a minute to get things online again.
Oh, okay.
So, oh, good.
I just heard you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have Zoom back.
It's okay. This is the sort of excitement that people are paying top no dollars for.
We could just continue with you on audio only for this episode, Dan, and then try to reset Zoom after if you want.
Oh my gosh.
Well, but see, we don't have audio for Dan unless he's got Zencaster up as well.
Well, he does. That's how we're hearing him.
Yeah, that's how you're hearing me is through Zencaster. Okay, give me 1 second.
It says I'm hearing you. Well, I'm hearing you, but I don't see the little bar moving in Zencaster. Oh, now I do. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to try rejoining Zoom. At what point did you lose me?
Basically, in the middle of your first extended sentence about, you probably just want to take it from the top about how you did an episode about this before. We got most of that, but you were transitioning into this episode when you cut out.
Okay, yeah, we should just start over at that.
I should have taken a screenshot so I could email you a picture of your face, and that would remind you where you were.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
That would have been really helpful.
Yes. We often, think of ourselves in the third person as we are speaking.
Brandon, how many books are you done with so far? Signing.
I've done about 4,000 of the 7,000.
Good luck.
Okay. Can you see me again?
Yes.
We can see you.
Yay! Awesome. Well, I'm glad that we had some drama for the video watchers so they can see the cool things that happen behind the scenes. Prior to this horrific year, 2020, we have never recorded remotely in the history of our show. And so there's a lot of kinks we're working out. All right. Marshall, we're still going with audio?
Yes.
Okay. Then we will have a moment of pause, and I'll start over at the top, like Brandon was saying, the top of my deliberate discomfort thing. So this episode, we want to talk about deliberate discomfort. And we did an episode on this topic earlier in the year that focused on writing things that are uncomfortable for your readers. Topics like sexism or racism or things like that that you know could be triggering issues for your readers and how to handle that appropriately. And this episode, we are going to focus on writing things that are uncomfortable for you as an author. Maybe that is a sex scene, or maybe you've got a character who swears a lot, something that you're worried your mom is going to read, or that a character does or thinks something that you would never say, but that your character does, all of those kinds of questions. So what I would love to start with is actually just asking our podcasters if they have some experience they want to share where they had to write something that kind of made them uncomfortable to write it.
The best example I can offer from me is the piece that I wrote for the, I've forgotten the title of it, the Robinson Wells benefit anthology.
Altered Perceptions?
Altered Perceptions, called No, I'm Fine, in which I was writing about a bad mental health episode that I had. And as I began writing it, it began to hurt. It was actual physically painful. The sensation that I sometimes get when I'm depressed is that I'm so sad that I'm feeling pain. There's a physical pain associated with it. And as I was writing, I was excited to sit down and write because the story was in my head and I was good to go. But putting the words on the page was painful. Sandra and the kids, we were taking a little spring break at a cabin, and they had gone to see, they'd gone out to see the sights or something. They came back, and Sandra took one look at me. It's like, what happened to you? I said, well, I wrote for 2 hours, and this piece is done, and it's beautiful, and please don't ask me to ever write this again, because it hurt so much to do. After having done it, pretty much all of the other things I'm afraid to write about because they make me uncomfortable, I sort of shrug off. I'm like, when the time comes I need to do them, I'll do them because I've already eaten the live spider today. Everything else is easy.
So to be clear for people who aren't familiar with that other anthology, this is kind of a first-person perspective on your own mental health issues and not wanting to have to rely on medication for them.
Yep.
Which was very painful to write.
I can link to it in the writer notes. It's free for people to read now. So
awesome. Brandon or Mahatab, have you got an experience of writing something that was uncomfortable or painful to write?
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. A few years ago, a writer friend had asked me to contribute to an anthology. And this is the only nonfiction piece that I've ever written, but it was about stories about fitting into Canada as an immigrant. And I was like, yeah, sure, no problem, I'll write it. But as I actually started writing it, I just found myself being so vulnerable because there were so many painful things about fitting into Canada, not knowing the people. Of course, luckily, language was not an issue. But just, some of the stupid things that I did. I just remember that I really had to dig deep to be able to write my experience of how I spent the first year out here, not knowing people, working, a job for a very long time. And then it was actually cathartic when I finally finished writing it, but I found myself cringing, very, very uncomfortable. But I think the main thing is I pushed through it, and it was one of the best things that I wrote.
Oh, that's awesome.
For me, it's a little bit different of an experience I want to share. Probably the most uncomfortable I've ever been when writing was when I tried to do it live in front of an audience. This was at JordanCon. We were going to run in a charity drive for World Builders. Pat Rothfuss was the guest of honor at JordanCon that year, and I thought, we'll just do a kind of live writing session where I brainstorm with a crowd, and start writing a story. And we did it on Twitch. And then Pat would stop by and answer some questions. And I thought this would actually be pretty easy for me for two reasons. One, in my class, we often do live brainstorming sessions where we come up with a story. And so I thought, I've done this before. And number two, I'm not very precious about my early drafts. I released Warbreaker, one of my novels, chapter by chapter as I wrote it. It doesn't really bother me for people to read unpolished work of mine. And so I thought these two things would combine together, and I found it enormously uncomfortable to be writing. For whatever reason, it was the idea that there were now several thousand eyes looking over my shoulder at everything I did. And even when I present an unfinished draft to people, it's at least something that I'm aware of what it is, right? I'm comfortable with it, and I say I release this. As I'm writing, I'm not sure what's going to come out. I'm not sure, how things are going to flow, how the words are going to look. And it was really, really uncomfortable to the point that I've never done another one again. Despite raising $1,000 for World Builders, I think, during that session that we did, which was pretty good. It shocked me by how uncomfortable I was.
That makes a lot of sense to me. That is, for me, one of the most violating feelings in the world is knowing that somebody's reading over my shoulder as I am writing. If my wife comes into the office or one of my kids comes in, I have to stop because I can't write while someone's looking. It feels so wrong. I don't know how to explain it. Some of my own experiences, the one that I wanted to point out was my most recent novel, Ghost Station, which is a Cold War spy novel on Audible. There is not a sex scene, but definitely a fade to black, these people are about to have sex kind of a scene, which I've never written before. And even as lightweight and as preliminary as it was, it took a lot for me to put that in there. The explicit, this is what's about to happen. We all know it. Let's put it in this book. And maybe it's because I come from a primarily YA background. Maybe it's because I am a very religious person. I don't know what it was. It was hard for me to write that. And it's interesting to me that it was harder to write that than to write all the grisly murder stuff that's in my horror novels. But there are certain lines that are harder to cross than others. And I think that's very individual. So as you were working on these, as you had to write these uncomfortable things we've been talking about, what did you do? How did you psych yourself up? Or what did you tell yourself that says, it's okay, I can do this?
One thing for me, while I was working on this thing, as it became uncomfortable, I had to keep telling myself, no one else thinks that this is awkward, right? Like, no one is pointing and saying, oh, you typed that word wrong. How can you possibly... All of the things that were going through my head, they weren't true. Despite them being valid emotions, I could counter them with a little bit of logic and saying, look, people are enjoying this. This is what they expected when they showed up. And yes, it's uncomfortable for me, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad experience.
Yeah, for me, I don't think I've still managed to write. I mean, though I write mostly middle grade, I did attempt a YA a few years ago in which I did want to write some sex scenes, but it was so badly written. And I'm so glad that the book is not sold yet, but it was hard. So, I started reading other books to see how well they did it. And I love the way Diana Gabaldon writes her Outlander series. It comes so naturally. Her sex scenes are fantastic. And I was like, I'm not cringing reading that because it's so well written and it just sounds so natural. All I can say is I have still not discovered exactly how to do that because, again, part of my culture is such that we did not have open discussions about this. We don't have talks about sex or body or feelings and stuff like that. So it's really hard, as a writer to make myself do that. So, I'm still struggling with it. And maybe at some point in time, I might pull out my YA book again and see if I've become braver But at the moment, I'm so glad that I'm in the MG world and I don't have to cross that line.
I want to ask Brandon, speaking of sex scenes, I remember when you were kind of given the reins of the Wheel of Time, there was a lot of discussion about this online because the Robert Jordan books did have, I mean, not like erotica, but there were, sexual situations, which up to that point, readers did not think that you could write that kind of stuff. And, outside of maybe one scene in the Mistborn series, you hadn't really written that kind of stuff. So what did you do to kind of get into that, to ease yourself over that obstacle?
Honestly, it wasn't hard for me. I have a certain threshold that I just personally am not likely to cross. Perhaps that will change. And Wheel of Time had never crossed that reading it for me, right? Wheel of Time does mostly fade to black, with a little bit of explicit things before. Actually, way more uncomfortable for me. I'd say the most uncomfortable scene for me to write in the Wheel of Time was a different one, which is there is a scene where a character takes another character over his knee and spanks her. Maybe it's a woman that takes a character over. Anyway, it's an intentional dispowerment of a female antagonist. And he had written for me to do this scene. I think I probably would not have put it in if I were writing it today. It just made me uncomfortable because I thought this feels like the wrong way to disempower a character. But this is a book series kind of from another generation. And this sort of thing had been more common in the Wheel of Time, and it's not something that I commonly put in my books. The sex scenes, two characters consenting who are in love, that didn't bother me, right? Now, I have different standards in my life, but I think that this is kind of what life is about. We choose our lines and we think about them and we maybe change them as we go through life. Like, that's what life is for. And someone having different lines from me just means that they're, looking at this differently. And certainly I didn't have a problem writing those things. But something like that, does that make sense? And in that case, I think it's a different thing. I think looking back, because I was a newer author then, I think I would have gone to Harriet and said, I just don't think this is the right way to disempower a character. I would rather not put this in the book and see what she said. So there's an example of something uncomfortable that I'm writing that I think perhaps should have nudged me the other direction, and not had it be in the book.
That is great. I definitely want to have a discussion about that. But first, we need to do our book of the week. And that's actually me. And I am doing not a book, but a role-playing game. This is one that some of you may have heard of because it has an Amazon series. It's called Tales from the Loop, which is a really neat kind of 80s nostalgia, weird science fiction game. And the reason that I thought it applied to this topic is because it doesn't have traditional hit points or damage or anything like that. But as bad things happen to your characters, you instead take conditions. And those conditions are things like upset, scared, exhausted, injured. And then the way that you get rid of those, the way you heal yourself, is that you have to go and have a conversation, a meaningful conversation with an important person in your life, which just feels like a really fascinating way in fiction to deal with those kinds of trauma issues, and for players and authors to work through those through the kind of role-playing improvisation. So Tales from the Loop, it's by Free League. It's a really great game. And that's
all my characters would be dead by Act 2.
All right, so let's get back to what Brandon was talking about, because I think that's really interesting. This discussion of, everyone has lines they won't cross. And what I really think we're talking about in this episode is what happens when my characters have lines that are different from my own. I have decided as an author that this person is going to use words that I don't use, or this person is going to do something that I would never do. And that makes me uncomfortable because those lines are different. So I want to ask first, how do you make that decision when you're writing a story that you really want to include something that makes you uncomfortable? How and why do you decide that?
Honestly, if the thought crosses my mind that, this story needs this and such scene, that's not the sort of scene that I'm comfortable writing because reasons. But if I've had the thought that is possibly the right sort of scene, then the odds are pretty good, at least in this stage of my career, the odds are pretty good that I need to trust my instinct and acknowledge that this book needs me to write something I'm not comfortable with. If after I've written it or after I've struggled to write it, I go back and look at it and feel like, no, this is wrong. This has changed the tone of the story, or I didn't do it well, or I did it so badly I'm not allowed to say I didn't do it well, which I gave that 2 votes because that's what's most likely going to happen. Then I'll revisit it, and I can't count the number of times in Schlock Mercenary I had an idea for a panel and realized I do not have the skill within the format I've created for myself to illustrate that the way my brain is illustrating it. So I'm going to move the camera. I've made that compromise a lot of times because I'm not as good at things as I want to be. But I'll never get good unless I try to write the scene, unless I try to draw the picture, no matter how uncomfortable it makes me, so I can step back for a bit and say, well, that was miserable. Did I do it well?
I'd got some very good advice from one of the mentors that I'd worked with on a previous novel called The Tiffin. And there were some scenes of violence against a child. And I was having a bit of difficulty writing it. And one of my mentor at that time said, think of yourself as an actor. An actor sometimes has to do a lot of different roles, and they just have to inhabit the character. So inhabit your character's skin and write from the character's perspective so that, you basically have to forget yourself. You have to forget that you're the author writing the story. Inhabit what your characters are going through or the violence that is happening against your character, and just write as honestly as possible. And somehow removing myself from the equation and just writing from, inhabiting that character's world helped me get through my barrier and write that particular scene. So sometimes you just have to do that. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. I think that's great advice. Brandon, do you have any last thoughts on this topic before we end?
It is something that I've thought about quite a bit as a writer, and it's something I had to be comfortable with early in my career. I've told this story before, but my younger sister, Lauren, my youngest sister, when I was writing Mistborn, the cursing in Mistborn is very light, but I don't just generally curse at all. And my characters were. And why did I do that? It's because I often come up with fantasy curses in my books. And in this particular book, it was a gang of thieves, and the fantasy curses were sounding silly coming out of these characters' mouths. And it's something I'm very conscious of. In certain world building, you can make, and with certain fantasy words, you can make them not sound silly, but sometimes they just do, depending on how you're making them. And that was ruining the tone of the story. And I said, I'm just going to have to come to our world swears for these characters. And again, they're very light, right? Most people wouldn't even consider them curses. But my little sister was one of my beta readers at like age 14, and she crossed them all out with a black marker. And she was super offended. And it was my first experience of this. People are going to be like, wow, Brandon is cursing. And right, like it is the weakest, but everyone again has their different lines. And so I had to kind of ask myself, and I said, well, it didn't bother me. I decided I was going to go forward with it. But, there are certain curses I've just never used in my books. There are certain derogatory terms for people that I just don't use. And I don't anticipate myself ever using them because of the the way I don't like what those words add to our society. And so I don't. And that's just kind of a personal choice on my part. And so it's like I have two lines. I have a line of things that I don't generally do, but that I don't think actually are, you know, that's not wrong for my characters to do. And then I have lines that I probably won't depict, at least in explicit detail, my characters ever doing. Because it's just not something that I want to write. And it's odd because I don't necessarily think these things are bad for other writers to write. But it's just not where I want to take my stories.
Awesome. So let's give you some homework to finish up. If you have decided that you want to put some kind of these elements into your fiction, but it's hard kind of getting over that first little hump, breaking the ice, here is an exercise. And for this one, I'm using swear words. I just want you to open a file and write down every swear word you know, every cuss, every bad word you can think of, put them into sentences, write them as dialogue. It will be uncomfortable, but it is going to kind of, like I said, it's going to break that ice a little bit. Then after that, delete the file, burn the paper you wrote it on, destroy it forever. It doesn't matter, because it just kind of, once you've written them down once, then later it will be much easier. Anyway, that was our episode. Thank you so much for watching. You are out of excuses. Now go write. Okay. And we're out.
Dan.
Yeah. That went well, but we have eaten up a half an hour on a 20-minute episode. That's not even counting the power outage. So we need to be a little faster next time.
Okay.
Great.
Cool. So this next one is maintaining passion for a story. Mahatab, you've got the book of the week and the writing prompt.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Marshall.
Sorry, guys. Let me just refresh the start a new recording, so the audio might dump out for a second. So just give me 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, Marshall, can I just say one thing? While we were talking, I did hear some clicking of keys in between towards the end of the episode.
That was Howard.
Oh, that was Howard. Okay,
I was gonna
sorry.
mute him, and then I didn't know how your editor works, so I just left it because I didn't know if he was going to start talking again. So
Okay.
it's I can mute you guys, or you can mute yourselves if you have, you know, e-tapping to do. In Zencaster, you just hit that little microphone and you can mute yourself. So it just kind of depends on how you guys want to do it. But give me 1 second.
All right.
Oh, I'm typing. I'm sorry.
Quiet. Oh, it's because Marshall turned everything off.
Yep. It seems like that sort of stuff is easy to take out in post when we all have 4 separate audio files coming in. So.
It's super easy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to mute myself. Just give me the...
Is everybody on? I saw Brandon talking and I didn't hear him.
Oh, talk again, Brandon.
Okay. Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas. Not hearing me?
That's weird. I can hear everybody.
So can I. Howard, actually, I think your health check just went through, so maybe try one more time, Brandon.
Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Connecticut.
Dang.
We're getting shaking head
Mahatab,
from
say something.
Howard.
Maybe Howard can't hear you either.
No, I can hear
Hi.
both Mahatab and Dan.
Okay.
That's weird. I can hear everybody.
It's okay. I can try refreshing.
I can't hear Howard.
And do that.
Okay, yeah, Howard and Brandon can't hear each other, so
That has happened
refresh.
before. Let me refresh it. Hold tight. Should force the health checks again. Go ahead.
Okay,
Hello?
talk.
Alabama,
I'm
Alaska,
talking.
Arizona, Arkansas.
Can you still not hear people?
I can't hear Howard.
Oh, man.
Okay. So what we'll do is I will kick everybody to the dashboard and just restart it, and then it should refresh everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
1 second.
So we have to re-click in order to get back in.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the dashboard. And I'm going to come back to this recording, and then you guys just come back in. It should fix it. Wait, you guys never left. Huh?
No, it
No.
didn't.
Nope.
It didn't move us at all.
Okay.
You need us to close and rejoin?
I'm trying to avoid that a little, but let me. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Why we can just do that.
Howard, can you hear me?
No,
like
they
no.
still can't hear each other.
No.
So do we need to like reload the page? Will that do it?
Yeah. Why don't you guys refresh and try that?
Okay.
Rather than me try to kick everybody out, because once you refresh, it should force you to. I'll check again, and then if it still
I
doesn't
refreshed and I'm back in. That was easy.
If it still doesn't work,
I refreshed as well.
Hello.
And I can hear Howard.
No, I can't hear Howard.
Okay. Marshall, can you hear Howard?
I cannot.
What?
That's weird. Okay.
Okay, Marshall, now you refresh.
All right. Okay.
Sound check from Brandon.
Good.
And from Mahtab.
Good.
And from Dan.
Good.
You've got us all?
Howard?
Howard gave you a sound check. Did you not hear it?
I did not.
Howard, can you hear Marshall?
Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna kick Howard out. Tell him not to be offended, and then
Okay, Howard, he's kicking you out.
and then just come back in. Okay.
And then you just need to get back in. This is Weirdsville.
Mm-hmm.
It happened one time recently when I was using this too. It's just some weird connection thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Now, those of you watching the video, this may seem like a very online specific problem. We have technical issues like this all the time when we record. So the nature of the problem is very pandemic quarantine-y, but this happens to us all the time.
Okay, Marshall, can you hear me?
I can, yes. Wonderful.
Okay, so everyone can hear everyone.
And can I hear Brandon?
Sound check from Brandon.
Hooray. Okay.
Hooray!
I'm gonna mute myself again, and then I'll hit record when you guys tell me to.
Okay. So we need to burn through this one very quickly if we're going to get out of here on time. So we are doing Maintaining Passion for a Story. Mahatab, you have the book of the week and the writing prompt, and
Yes.
I will throw those to you when you are ready. Do you still have your notes on those?
Yes, I do. Right here.
Okay. Excellent. So, Howard, go for it.
Pre-roll, Maintaining Passion for a Story, Project 2.
This is Writing Excuses, Maintaining Passion for a Story with
15.
Mahatab Narsimhan.
Oh, sorry. I stepped on the end of your line. Start again.
Okay, I'll start again.
And actually, I didn't start recording right away either. Do you want to just do the pre-roll part again too, Howard?
We'll do everything.
Okay. Stop. Oh, you want me to do the
Yeah,
whole...
I thought you were going to pre-roll. Because we didn't, he said...
Fine, I will. Pre-roll, Project 2, Maintaining Passion for a Story, and for a Writing Excuses episode, and for a pre-roll.
This is Writing Excuses, Maintaining Passion for a Story with Mahatab Narsimhan.
15 minutes long.
Because you're in a hurry.
And we're not that smart.
I'm Dan.
I'm Howard.
I'm Mahatab.
And I'm Brandon.
This is a topic that was requested by some of our listeners, as has been most of the year. How do we stay excited about a book? And there's a lot of different parts of a book that we need to stay excited for. And so we're going to talk about those. And so what I want to ask first is what do you do if you are in the middle of a book? Books take a long time to write, in many months or perhaps even years. So if you're in the middle and you've been working on this for so long and you know that there's a bunch of it left, how do you stay excited about it?
At risk of saying the unpopular thing here, I long ago gave up on the illusion that I was going to be excited and thrilled about writing every time I sat down to write. And I allow myself to not necessarily be miserable, because when I'm miserable, the writing's not going to come out well. I allow myself to just muscle through it with the understanding that not wanting to write is not the same as having become bored with the story. Because if I've become bored with the story, that might be symptomatic that the reader is also going to be bored with the story, and it is time for me to do something different with it. But I don't always have to be excited to write. And I mean, I love being excited to write. That's one of my favorite things. And it's wonderful when it happens, but I don't assume that that has to be the case.
Yeah, I think that's really an astute comment that should frame the rest of this conversation. Howard is absolutely right. And everything that I'm going to say takes into consideration that you are understanding that aspect. For me, one thing that is key, particularly for a long book, is it's glibly said, and I don't know who said this first, you know, try to leave out the boring parts, right? And non-glibly said, what that really has always meant to me is I ask myself for every scene, why is this potentially going to be somebody's favorite scene in the book? And if there's a fallacy I think you can fall into where you're like, if I can just get through these boring bits, I can get to the exciting bits. Where the really great stories are the ones where they make what would be the boring bits in another book the exciting bits in this book. I talk a lot about promises, progress, and payoff, and that progress is the big chunk of your book. And asking yourself, why is this clue? Why is this development? This character moment? Why is this thing going to give this sense of progress? Why is it exciting that this step on the journey is happening? And there's a lot of tricks you can use to do that, but starting with that has always been helpful to me.
I think for me, it's always been, because I don't write very long novels, for me, the hardest part is when I have to stop in the middle of a novel or in the middle of a first draft and work on something else and then come back to it. For me, that has always been the hardest part of how to rekindle the passion or how to get interested in that story again. And what I always go back to is I go back to the outline. I go back to all the notes that I've made about it, maybe any videos that I had that I'd saved about it. And I definitely look at the ending. For me, the ending is so important. And if that ending is something that I love and I want to work towards, that's how I, kind of recapture the excitement to make sure that I finish the novel or, get back into it. For me, that's the most important.
I agree with everything Mahatab just said, and I want to add, going back not just to the notes and to the ending, but to the initial pitch, because that's what got me excited about this in the first place, right? There was some cool idea or character or something that I was super thrilled about that made me want to write this book. And just remembering what that was and thinking, oh yeah, that was the hook that pulled me into this story, can help get through those middle parts as well. So one of the things that hasn't been mentioned yet is beginnings. Beginnings and endings are the really exciting parts of a story because we're either just starting it and it's brand new and fresh, or we're finally wrapping it up and it gets to be climactic and exciting. And I think one of the problems that people like the person who asked this question are running into is that new things are exciting because they're new, not because they're good. If your idea is both new and good, then that's awesome and you should write it. But that makes the middle, which is good but not new, kind of pale in comparison. It makes it not as thrilling. So it's important to remember that as well, I think.
And one more thing. Sorry, go ahead.
All right. I've been rewatching some episodes of the Blacklist, which has James Spader as a career criminal who's now working with the FBI, and James Spader can absolutely chew scenery. Absolutely chew scenery. There are action scenes and exciting reveals and stuff in this TV show that are not the whole show. And then some of my very favorite moments are these things in the middle where Spader's character, Raymond Reddington, relates a weird offbeat story to someone, like he's talking just to fill space, and you realize this is very entertaining, and what does it have to do with the story? It's just Reddington being random, and then he ties it into the story in a way that's suddenly very sinister, and you're like, oh no, you just foreshadowed our plot twist. That model for me, if you're we've talked a little in the past about scene-sequel format, the idea that scenes are where things happen and sequel are where we process what happened. Sometimes when you're bogged down in the middle, it's because there's all this processing to be done and it doesn't feel exciting. And I love clever dialogue and fun turns of phrase. And, when it's actors chewing scenery, I delight in that. There's a lot of fun to be had in the middle of a book when one character bringing us up to speed with their journey just like reignites all of the fires at once.
Mahatab, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say, what sometimes people find the middle difficult or they kind of get stuck is because, as you mentioned earlier, the starting of a story or a shiny new idea is always good because it's so hard to get through the middle and then to the end. So, you always get attracted to, this is a fabulous idea. Let me go pursue this. But what you've got to realize is that once you get through that hump of the beginning and go back to the middle, it's going to be hard again. And the main, I would say, the metal of a true writer is being able to go all the way to the end. So no matter how hard, stick with it. Just stick with it because you'll always have these shiny new ideas jumping around. Ignore them. Go to the end, however difficult.
That's really good advice. Extremely good advice right there.
Thank you.
Now, I've got another big question, a big topic for us to get into. But first, it is time for our book of the week. And Mahatab has that for us.
Yes, and I would love to recommend Dust by Arthur Slade. Arthur Slade is a Canadian writer. He writes a lot of science fiction and fantasy, but Dust is one of my absolute favorites because he's really melded middle grade horror with science fiction. And all of this is set in Saskatchewan, which is, prairie town in the 1930s. And the story starts with a young boy disappearing. And he's about 7 years old, and his older brother, who's 11, is devastated, and the entire town goes looking for him, but they don't find the boy. And around the same time, a stranger comes to town, and he promises to start up a rain machine or manufacture a rain machine that is going to end the drought in the area. And as the story progresses, more and more kids are disappearing from the village, from the town, but the parents don't seem to know what's going on, or they seem to forget about it. And the ending is just fantastic. So, and he's also, the great part is Arthur has also narrated this book himself. So it's almost like he's reading the book out to you. So I would definitely recommend Dust by Arthur Slade.
Thank you very much. All right. So we had another listener question about maintaining passion for a story. But this one was about how do you stay passionate about a story during the revision process when you've already finished it and you look back at it and realize it's terrible and that you're going to have to fix all this broken stuff and you see all these horrible flaws. How do you stay excited about it then?
This is what I've been thinking about this whole time because I don't often lose passion for a book in the middle of it. Where my passion wanes is when I'm on the 4th draft of that book, or even the 3rd draft, right? And we're talking, I just finished Rhythm of War revisions earlier this year, and that's a 450,000 word book, right? That I had to do 5 drafts of. that needed significant revisions in some places. And I would say the only tips I have on this are, number one, remember what Mahatab just said. That's when the shiny new ideas really start to pop out at me. And a big problem in my career early on was that I would go chase those instead of revising. I'd figure, oh, I've got this book done. I'll go chase that idea. And I would never get to the revisions, and I never learned revision. And it held me back quite a bit. The other thing that really helps me is a solid deadline imposed on myself of a number of words I need to do in a day. I learn how much is a good day's work for me. On revision, I say, you have to hit this goal. And then usually there's a bit of a carrot at the end. If you hit this goal, you may go take this time off and do something else. Like the sooner you hit this goal, the sooner you get to take that time off. And that structure for the way my personalized psychology works is the way to make me do this, is just to set it out and have a deadline and go.
Yeah, gamification is key in a number of pursuits for all kinds of different people. Gamifying it so that you are looking at this horrible task in front of you, and it's a game. And once you beat the game, you know, you look at your score, you get a prize, whatever. It is difficult, and I gotta tell you, fair listener and viewer, you want to be a person who does difficult things. That's who you want to be, right? You don't want to just do easy things. You want to be someone who does difficult things. And sometimes when I look at revision, and I'm wrestling with it, and it's difficult, I'll remind myself, well, if it was easy, everybody would do it. It's supposed to be hard. And then I ask myself, why is it being difficult? Is it difficult because it's a slog and I'm bored? Or is it difficult because I'm trying to hold too many things in my head at once and I need to break down my revision process in a different way? Having participated in Brandon's writers group for a bit, the fact that he breaks down some of these editorial passes in, you know, character voices and other things, I look at that and think, oh gosh, that's a lot of organizational work. But for a manuscript that's got 500,000 words in it, that's the only way to get it done consistently. And so I've had to ask myself, when I'm stuck in the middle of a revision, am I stuck because this is being too hard because I can't think of everything at once? And if that's the case, well, I'm just going to make some notes for myself, and I'm going to do the pass this way, and then I'm going to do the pass this way, and it's going to feel like it takes longer, but suddenly I'm more efficient, and it actually kind of becomes fun.
Now, both Brandon and Howard have been talking about treating this like a job, which I definitely think is an important way to go about it. But I do think that there are some moments of excitement to be found in the revision process. I've heard both of you talk about puzzling over a problem and being stuck on it, and I cannot make this scene or this character work until finally you find it. And that thrill that just floods in, that makes the whole arduous puzzle solving worth it. And so many authors, every author I know, I think, has had that moment of, oh my gosh, I finally made this work. I am as happy as I've ever been in my life. And that's worth looking forward to.
Yeah, and what I'd like to add here is sometimes, you know, just talking about your manuscript with a critique partner, it doesn't have to be your whole group. You know, I've got about 5 or 6 people that I regularly go to, but just one trusted person. If you are able to discuss what your issue is or what is stopping you or what you're unhappy with, sometimes just talking it out, helps you get over that barrier, and, you know, you start thinking of different things, and someone giving you feedback on what they think may not be working just helps you, you know, get past whatever was stopping you and think of new ideas. So sometimes I feel just speaking it out helps you get through it.
Agreed. Now, our time is up, so we do have homework for you, and this comes from Mahatab.
Okay, so I think this kind of almost encompasses what we've been speaking about. For one, go back to your notes and your outlines and take a look at what was it that excited you about your story. And the best thing to do is don't look at it on a computer. Try and write it out in longhand, because there is I feel there's a deeper connection when you're actually writing down stuff on paper, using a pen, pencil, whatever. It helps you slow down stuff rather than when you're typing at a very high speed. The other thing I would suggest, again, is what I do. Speak to a critique partner. It just needs to be one person whose opinion you really trust, and see if they can advise you on something. And I think the third most important thing is take a really good look at your ending. If your ending is not spectacular or really fantastic, that's what probably is not why you're passionate about getting to the end. As Brandon had once said, plot backwards and write forwards. I think that's my mantra right now. So it really works for me.
So our homework is take whatever you're doing right now, go back to the original notes and write down in longhand what excited you, what attracted you to that in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This is Writing Excuses. You are out of excuses. Now go write.
Out.
Okay.
We constrained our time a little better that one. Thank you, everybody. Okay, final topic is
Let's
feedback.
make sure that Brandon and I can still hear each other.
I can hear you, Howard.
Well, I haven't restarted it. Let me start a new recording, and then we'll test it real quick. Okay?
Then we'll see what happens.
Fingers crossed.
Sound check from Brandon.
I can hear Brandon.
Dan, it says it's waiting for your microphone access on my thing. So,
I see the same thing.
yep, Dan needs to refresh.
What about me? Am I okay?
Oh, you're
I can
awesome,
hear you.
Mahatab. None of us doubted that. We were expecting Dan to fail.
Oh, you're so sweet.
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Awesome. This is very late in the game to be asking this, but Brandon, do you have a lamp you can turn on or something?
Yeah, I noticed that. It's my assistant's room, like I said. So let me just try and open the window.
Yeah, I can see that getting lighter already.
Yeah, maybe that gives more light. He just didn't think that this was actually visually going to be recorded. Otherwise, he would have set up the lights.
Yeah, well, this is the first time, like I said, that we have ever done visual recording, ever.
Mm-hmm.
So please forgive us for being morons, beloved viewers. Okay, so we're going to do our third episode is about feedback, when to listen and when to ignore it. And Howard has got the homework and the book of the week for this. No, you don't have a book of the week yet.
Yes, I do.
Oh, yes, you do. What unites us? Awesome. Okay. Very good. Okay. Are we ready to go?
Yes.
Well, then let's dive in and do this. Marshall, are we recording?
Recording everything except Zencaster. I'll hit it as soon as you guys are ready.
Go ahead and hit. Go ahead.
Hit it
And,
now, and then Howard will pre-roll us.
hang on, I'm getting up. Look, I'm getting a weird noise. What's the weird noise? I printed my notes on the homework on the book of the week, and hearing the printer through the headphones was, oh. All right, making sure all the windows are in the right places and I'm looking at all the right things, and pre-roll feedback, project 3.
This is Writing Excuses, feedback, when to listen and when to ignore, with Mahatab Narsimhan.
15 minutes long.
Because you're in a hurry.
And we're not that smart.
I'm Dan.
I'm Howard.
I'm Mahatab.
And I'm Brandon, which I keep telling you, and I'd like you to take that feedback.
So we talk all the time about how to give feedback, how to construct a good writing group, how to train your alpha and beta readers. And one of the points we hit on a lot is that what you're looking for at that feedback stage is reactions rather than specific prescriptive advice. But as one of our listeners pointed out in an email asking this question, prescriptive advice is incredibly valuable, and we all do it and we all get it. And so we're clearly not saying ignore every suggestion that comes to you. What we need to talk about now then is, how do you decide which pieces of advice you're going to listen to and which ones you're going to discard? When should you actively seek out that kind of specifically prescriptive feedback? So first ideas, like when do you seek it out? At what point do you say, hey, I need you to answer this question for me?
Approaching it from a different angle, until I have gotten reader reactions from someone and they've been able to articulate their reaction to me in a way that I understand, I'm not going to accept feedback from them. If someone hasn't yet told me that this scene made them feel a certain way, I'm not ready to accept their feedback on how to rewrite the scene. I want to know that you can tell me how you feel before you tell me how to rewrite the scene so that you feel what you're supposed to.
Yeah, that's a good piece of advice. The one thing I do is I kind of arrange my readers by what type of advice I want them to give me. For example, when I use a subject matter expert, I recently wrote a story about someone who's paraplegic, and I went and I hired several people to read the story. And to them, I said, they were paraplegic. I said, I want you to tell me what I'm doing wrong and how to fix it, specifically how this differs from your life experience and life experience that other disabled people have. And I want you to tell me. For other readers, though, I'd say, I just want to know your reaction. I want to know if my characters are working and my story's working. The way you help me with that is by telling me your just feedback emotionally. And I'm looking for different things from different people. From my editor, I want them to tell me what they suggest I do to fix a problem when they've noticed it. Because I might not take that, but there's a much better chance that I will take it when it comes from an editor who really knows what they're doing.
Let me follow up on that subject matter expert thing. When you got feedback from them, how much of that feedback was just kind of the mechanics of daily life with someone who's paraplegic, and how much of that was the story or the characterization are broken, and here's how you can fix those? Because that seems like it kind of straddles that line between subject matter and storytelling.
It was actually weighted toward the latter. I would have thought it would be weighted toward the former, but those things are very easy to fix. When someone says, I usually keep a pole next to me so I can reach things and pull them across the desk to me, that's like, oh, that's really handy. I will do that. That's an easy fix. But when they say something along the lines of, what piece of feedback I got on this piece, which was really helpful, was all of them notice, they say, we work in a community. We talk to other people. And a lot of people when they write a story, like I had done, they talk about this person in isolation, which is not how we do it. And it makes it seem like this person is the only person who is paraplegic in the whole world. And again, that's very common. And I hadn't realized that's what you do. But of course, you're part of a community. I'm part of a community of writers. I'm part of a community of people who share a faith with me. I'm part of a community of people who are parenting. We look for people who have a shared life experience so we can help each other. And this is something that I had done flat out wrong that required a really big revisitation of how I was viewing the character and the story, because it was flat out wrong. And that sort of thing was a harder revision, but was also more surprising to me, and it's the sort of stuff I needed a subject matter expert to explain to me.
Okay. I would actually call those sensitivity readers. I mean, that's what happens when, you're writing at least middle grade YA fiction, and you're writing someone with whom you don't share the identity or a marginalized status or what have you. I mean, you do not have the similar background. That's when you get someone who we call like a sensitivity reader, who's going to look at your story and tell you, okay, this is what it is, or this is what you need to think about. As you rightly said, Brandy, they're not in isolation. But sometimes when we're writing from an outsider's perspective, we almost make that kind of an issue story, or, the issue with that character is their disability or whatever. And sometimes having someone with that background read it almost gives you a whole different perspective, because they do not see it as an issue, because they're part of a community that, where this is not the center stage. You can get other feedback from it. But just coming back to your point, Dan, as to when do you seek feedback? When I've taken a story to a certain level and I can do no more with it, is when I would actually send it out to my critique group. And one of the good things is I have a group that has different strengths. So someone is really good with the big picture perspective. So they would really look at the forest. And there are some who actually look at the trees, and they go down to the bush level, and, they will absolutely look at, the pacing and the plot and the characterization. So, that's when you take the feedback from these people, which is of, a different, each one gives you a different idea or a different facet of what your story is. And then once it comes back to you, I think the onus is on you. And it goes with your gut feel of, should I accept this feedback or shouldn't I? And if it does not fit with your vision, no matter who's given it to me, I will probably not follow it.
Okay, I want to pause now for the book of the week, which we get from Howard.
Yes. It's not really related to the topic, but I really, really enjoyed Dan Rather's book, What Unites Us. Dan Rather has been a fixture in American and, let's be honest, world news broadcast for, I want to say 50 years, at least 40 years. And his experiences, it's kind of a retrospective of the way he sees the American nation and the people who are in it. And I really loved it. I needed it when I listened to it. I don't know if you do, but the audiobook was quite good, and that was the way I experienced it. So I can't speak to reading the words on the paper with my own eyeballs and brain. That's for other people to discover. But the book is called What Unites Us by Dan Rather.
Thank you. Now, the common thread between all of your comments in the first half of the episode were heavily kind of focused around this idea that you have curated your groups of people that you get feedback from, and that when you look for specific feedback, you are trying to get it from specific people and for specific reasons. So let's talk just really quick about that. How do you find these people that you trust? Not talking about specifically subject matter experts or sensitivity readers, but just in general. How do you find those people, and how do you decide, yes, I trust what this person is going to tell me to do?
Well, with beta readers in particular, it doesn't matter, right? Because I'm not asking them to tell me what to do. And so the people who tell me what to do that that I'm looking for are professionals, right? Which is a different sort of thing. I find my beta readers generally, they are people who have been long-term friends, people who are active in fandom, or people that other beta readers have recommended. We do that a lot. We try to add a few new people every book that I do, and not have everyone do every book, right? So we shake it up. And it's just a process of watching who makes astute comments on forum posts about the books, who are active on a Facebook post. Those are the people I look for. But for alpha readers that are giving me direct, fix this, I'm generally only looking at like my agent, my editor, my writing group for that.
I think for me, I joined a lot of organizations, and again, they've got forums, so you can connect with people on the forums and say, okay, I'm looking for a critique partner, and everyone kind of just exchanges emails and then goes for it. At least that's how I started with. But then over the years, I kind of got closer to a group of people because they write similar stuff that I do, and I like their work, and they like my work. So we kind of broke off and formed our own groups. But if you're looking in the children's section, SCBWI, Canscape, these are the at least for the US, it's SCBWI. If you join those groups, there are areas where you can exchange information, find critique partners. I would say start out with maybe a chapter or two. See what the feedback is like. See if they're on the same wavelength as you are before you go deeper down the rabbit hole and then, become good critique partners. Because sometimes, what if you're not at a similar level, or if the level of feedback that you're getting is not what you're looking for, then that relationship or that critique is not really helping you. So you also have to pick and choose. Don't just say yes to anyone who says they're going to give you feedback.
That kind of audition process, so to speak, I think is really important because, we've talked before about how to find, fellow writers and form your little groups and things. But going through that kind of vetting process of saying, okay, you know what, I really like your feedback, or you're giving me feedback that I don't think is valuable, that's a big step. And it can be difficult to say, you know what, this relationship isn't working. I think we should break up.
Mm-hmm. There is, to my mind, there is an easier and much lower pressure way to get to that point. And that is to socialize, and I guess Zoom may be the way that we're doing this for the foreseeable future. Socialize with people who write and who consume media that you consume, and talk about the things that you're consuming. If Dan and I both sit down and talk about The Mandalorian, and I say, oh my gosh, it's my favorite Star Wars ever because it's like a cowboy movie, Star Wars, and I don't know what Dan's going to say about it. But if Dan's feedback about Mandalorian makes me feel like the two of us watched a completely different show, he's out of my group. Not because he's wrong, but because connecting might be so very, very difficult. Initially, for seeking feedback, I want to get feedback from people whose critiques I'm able to understand. We both watched a movie and we both agreed, wow, the protagonist fails to protag for the entire first act. And by the time the second act showed up, we didn't like him anymore. And we both get that, like, oh yes, this is someone I can, because when they critique my work, I'll be like, oh yes, you're right. And when you prescribe something to me, I'm more likely to get it. Now that initially is going to create kind of a bubble, and you want to branch out from that, but start friendly first, I think.
Yeah, and it is a very tricky line to walk, because you don't want to get into that feedback echo chamber. I always really value opinions that are different from my own, because that, I think, is going to help me look for new solutions and new answers. But on the other hand, someone who is constantly suggesting ideas that don't fit with my style at all, that's not going to be valuable to me. And so it all comes back to this idea of just very carefully deciding who you're going to talk to, and well, I guess who you're going to get that prescriptive feedback from. The person whose ideas are super different from mine, yes, give me all your reactions, please. But when it comes to how am I going to actually change this, that's when I do tend to rely on people who have similar sensibilities to my own.
Or I would add, the further someone gets in the professional field of writing and storytelling, the more it seems they are able to help a story become a better version of itself rather than trying to push it one direction or another. That's not to say that all agents and editors are perfect at this, or even, you know, all writing group members, but I've noticed that people who write a lot, for instance, Dan tends to be better at looking at one of my books and saying, here's what I think you're trying to do, here's how to make it better. Where there are other people who are longtime writing group members of mine who like my books, who often give good feedback, that if you give them a book that's outside their normal reading comfort level, they'll give bad feedback on it. Where I've never gotten bad feedback from Dan because, as an industry professional, he reads a lot of things, and even things he doesn't like, he can say, here's how I think you can make a better version of this thing that I don't necessarily like, which is a really great skill for a storyteller to learn, I think, but it is not something you can expect from your average, even writing group member, I think.
I want to print up business cards that say, Dan Wells, I will help you make a better version of a thing that you're doing that I don't like, even though you're doing a thing that I don't like.
Where do I sign up? But just very quickly to say something about what you said, Dan, was sometimes you can get the same feedback from the same group that you're with. So getting a totally fresh perspective, even if it does not gel with your own thinking, I think is very valuable. But at the end of the day, you have to decide, am I taking it or leaving it? And that decision rests entirely with you. So you just stay true to your vision, no matter who gives you feedback.
Yeah. Well,
one of the things that Brandon said, the ability to say, as a critiquer, the ability to say, for instance, it feels like in this scene you are presenting me with a red herring, and you want me to feel doubt about this, and you want me to become convinced of this. If that's the case, you need to punch this bit up more and punch that bit down a little bit in order to adjust the balance. But if this isn't meant for red herring, whatever, then ignore everything that I said. I will give feedback like that to Bob all the time because I don't know where Bob's book is going, but I will tell him, this was my response, and this is where I think maybe your levels need to be set. And Bob will smile and nod, and I have no idea if he's going to take my advice or not, but he knows what to do with it.
So as a final word, I suppose more than anything else, I just want to give you as a writer permission to get prescriptive feedback, to take suggestions from other people. Don't feel like we have told you you're not allowed to. I do believe that at the end of the day, you know how to fix your story better than anybody else. But that doesn't mean that someone is not going to come along with a brilliant idea that will solve your problems for you. That does happen, and absolutely be open to those experiences. So let's end with some homework from Howard.
Okay. Bear with me. You're gonna want to do this with a friend, okay? Step one, each of you prepare a quick written critique of a movie. Maybe one, I mean, they can be different movies, but something that you've watched and has problems that you're willing to critique. Now, share your critiques with each other, swap them. Now, you take the critique that your friend gave of this movie. Oh, and when you wrote the critiques, you anonymized it. You didn't say like character name, you just say like protagonist or antagonist. Anyway, so you get this feedback from this movie. Now, file as many of the serial numbers off as you can, set it down next to your manuscript, and treat this bit of random, utterly random feedback as if it was aimed at your manuscript. Why are you doing this? So that you can see what absolute nonsense looks like with regard to your manuscript, and so that you can have the broken watches write twice a day experience of, Oh my gosh. That thing that you said about the Phantom Menace applies to my book. Oh no. It may seem really weird, but by doing this, what you're going to do is refine your filters for the sort of feedback you receive. And it's going to knock you out of the box and maybe make some of your writing better.
I really like this homework. I think it is a cool idea to teach you how to sort through the value of a bunch of feedback. So cool. Anyway, that's our show for today. Thank you so much for listening. This is Writing Excuses. You are out of excuses. Now go write.
Out.
All right.
That was a very William Shatner-ish reading of the final tagline.
All right. That worked really well for me, all things considered. But I do have to run. I'm going to just zip out, and maybe Adam will come up and wrap things up here. But I got to go sign a bunch of stuff more and then get to the panel I'm on. So
good luck.
Okay.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks.
And I think we're basically done, unless anyone wants to give some final words of love and encouragement to our video watchers.
I just want to say it's a pleasure to see Mahatav again.
Oh, thank
you. Yes, it is.
A pleasure. It's lovely to see you guys too. And I think the only thing I can say is trust in the process, believe in yourself, and don't give up.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, that's the end of our video. This is the first time we've done this, but I think it was kind of fun, and we might end up streaming some recording sessions at some point in the future. We'll be better at it next time. Anyway.
We won't. No, we won't. We
will eventually be better at it.
We will make all new mistakes.
Probably not next time. Let's say that. And when you hear these episodes later in the year, because they will be broadcast through our regular podcasting services, pretend like you didn't already see this video and they will be brand new to you.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween, everyone. Goodbye. Thanks for watching.